Imagine waking up in a city that never quite becomes quiet. Not a modern city filled with engines and glowing screens, but a city of sandals against stone, wooden wheels rattling across uneven roads, distant voices echoing between crowded apartment buildings, and thousands upon thousands of people already beginning their day before the sun has fully climbed into the sky. Tonight, we are traveling to ancient Rome. Not the Rome of triumphal parades or dramatic battles. Not the Rome of emperors standing beneath marble monuments. Instead, we are going somewhere far more ordinary. We are going to meet the people who rarely appear in history books. The bakers, the shopkeepers, the laborers, the children carrying errands, the mothers preparing meals, the workers hauling cargo through narrow streets, the countless ordinary Romans whose daily routines quietly kept one of history's greatest cities alive. As we wander through their world, you may discover that life in ancient Rome was at once familiar and strangely distant. People worried about money. They complained about neighbors. They rushed to work. They searched for entertainment. They hoped their children would succeed. Yet almost every detail of daily life unfolded differently from the world we know today. The smells were different. The sounds were different. Even something as simple as getting a drink of water involved an entirely different experience. So settle in comfortably. Allow the noise of the modern world to drift a little farther away. And together, let us take a slow walk through the streets of ancient Rome. The city is waking up, and our journey begins before sunrise. Chapter 1. A city awakens before sunrise. Long before the first rays of sunlight reach the rooftops, ancient Rome is already stirring. You might expect such a great city to wake gradually. But Rome rarely moves slowly. Even in darkness, activity begins. Somewhere nearby, a baker has already lit a fire. The scent of warm grain and wood smoke drifts into the cool morning air. A donkey shifts impatiently in a small courtyard. Metal tools clink together as workers prepare for another day. Voices emerge from windows and doorways. A child cries briefly before being soothed. A merchant checks supplies by the light of a small oil lamp. For many Romans, sunrise is not the beginning of the day. It is simply the moment when work becomes easier to see. The city itself is enormous. At its height, Rome may have housed hundreds of thousands, perhaps even over 1 million people, making it one of the largest urban centers the world had ever seen. And fitting all those people into a single city creates certain challenges. Space is limited. Privacy is rare. Quiet is precious. Many ordinary Romans live in tall apartment buildings known as insulae. These structures crowd together along busy streets, rising several stories high. From a distance, they might seem impressive. From inside, they are often cramped, noisy, and uncomfortable. Imagine opening your eyes in a small rented room. The bed is simple. The furnishings are few. There is no electric light. No central heating. No running water inside most homes. The room may already feel warm in summer or surprisingly cold in winter. Outside your window, if you are fortunate enough to have one, the city is beginning its daily performance. Below, the street slowly fills with movement. People emerge carrying baskets. Laborers head toward construction sites. Slaves hurry to complete morning tasks before their owners awaken. Shopkeepers raise wooden shutters. The city seems to stretch and yawn before throwing itself into another busy day. For wealthier Romans, mornings unfold differently. Large houses known as domus offer comforts unavailable to most citizens. These homes often surround open courtyards where fountains quietly splash. Fresh air circulates more easily. Rooms are larger. Servants handle many daily tasks. Yet even here, mornings begin early. The Roman day values activity. Business, politics, social obligations, and commerce all favor the morning hours. The heat of the afternoon often makes strenuous work less appealing. So much of life happens before midday. As sunlight gradually spills across rooftops, the city becomes brighter. Marble buildings catch the first golden light. Temple columns glow softly. Dust begins rising from busy roads. And somewhere in this vast urban landscape, countless individual stories are beginning all at once. A baker kneads dough. A teacher prepares lessons. A merchant counts coins. A dockworker heads toward the river. A child reluctantly prepares for school. None of them know they are living inside what future generations will call history. To them, it is simply another morning. And perhaps that is one of the most fascinating things about ancient Rome. The people who built one of the world's most famous civilizations were not constantly thinking about greatness. Most were thinking about breakfast, or work, or rent, or family responsibilities, or whether today's weather might make an already difficult job even harder. The grand empire exists around them, but daily life remains stubbornly ordinary. As the sun rises higher, shadows shorten. The streets grow busier. The smell of baking bread becomes stronger. And our walk through ancient Rome is only beginning. In the next chapter, we will step inside the places where most Romans actually lived, discovering why housing in the ancient city could be surprisingly uncomfortable, surprisingly dangerous, and sometimes astonishingly crowded. Chapter 2, where most Romans actually lived. As the morning brightens and the city settles into its daily rhythm, let us leave the streets for a moment and step inside the places where most Romans spent their private lives. When people imagine ancient Rome, they often picture elegant villas decorated with colorful mosaics, peaceful courtyards shaded by columns, and fountains murmuring softly in the background. Those homes certainly existed, but they belonged to a relatively small portion of the population. For most people, daily life unfolded in a very different environment. To understand Rome properly, it helps to look upward. Above the shops, above the busy sidewalks, above the crowded ground floors, there, stacked layer upon layer, rise the apartment buildings known as insulae. These structures dominate much of the urban landscape. Some stretch several stories into the air, creating narrow canyons of stone, brick, timber, and plaster between neighboring buildings. From the street, they can appear lively and practical. Inside, however, life is often far less comfortable. Imagine climbing a steep wooden staircase before breakfast. The steps creak beneath your feet. The hallway is narrow. Light is limited. The air carries traces of cooking smoke, damp plaster, and whatever meal your neighbors prepared the previous evening. The higher you climb, the smaller and less desirable the apartments generally become. The wealthiest tenants occupy lower floors. They enjoy easier access and larger rooms. Those with fewer resources often live near the top. Unfortunately, that means climbing many flights of stairs every single day. There are no elevators, no moving walkways, no shortcuts, only stairs. And after carrying water, supplies, or groceries home, those stairs may feel considerably longer. A typical apartment might consist of only a few rooms. Some are little more than sleeping spaces. Furniture remains limited because space itself is limited. Every object must justify its existence. Beds, stools, storage chests, and simple tables fill much of the available area. Families often share rooms. Privacy is not something many Romans expect. Children, parents, relatives, and sometimes even lodgers may occupy the same small living space. Modern listeners might find this difficult to imagine. Today, many people think of home as a retreat from the outside world, a place for solitude and personal space. For many Romans, home is simply where life continues in a different form. The sounds of neighbors remain constant. Conversations pass through walls. Footsteps echo overhead. Doors open and close throughout the day. Someone is always cooking. Someone is always arguing. Someone is always carrying something up or down a staircase. Silence becomes a rare luxury. Then there is the question of water. Most apartment buildings do not possess convenient plumbing in the modern sense. Public fountains provide much of the city's water supply. This means regular trips to collect water for drinking, cooking, washing, and other daily needs. A simple household task becomes a recurring chore. You cannot merely turn a handle and expect water to appear. Someone must fetch it. Someone must carry it. Someone must manage it carefully. Water is available, but convenience is another matter entirely. The danger of fire also hangs quietly over the city. Many apartment buildings contain wooden elements. Cooking fires are common. Oil lamps provide light after dark. Buildings stand close together. All these factors create risks. A small accident can quickly become a neighborhood emergency. Romans understand this danger well. A flickering flame is not merely a source of light. It is something that must be watched, respected, managed carefully. At night, the glow of countless lamps illuminates windows across the city. Beautiful perhaps, but each tiny flame carries a degree of risk. Structural safety can also be uncertain. Ancient writers occasionally complained about poorly constructed buildings. Landlords seeking profit sometimes cut corners. Repairs may be delayed. Materials may not always be ideal. Residents learn to live with imperfections. A cracked wall, a leaking roof, a staircase that seems slightly less sturdy than one might prefer. Such inconveniences become part of everyday life. Yet despite these challenges, apartment buildings remain vibrant places. They are filled with human activity. People form friendships. Children invent games. Families celebrate festivals. Neighbors exchange gossip. Life continues. In fact, some residents may even enjoy aspects of this close-packed environment. After all, loneliness is difficult when hundreds of people live within shouting distance. Everyone knows something about everyone else, sometimes more than they would like. A successful merchant might move into a better apartment. A struggling family may squeeze additional relatives into an already crowded room. News spreads quickly through the building. Arguments spread even faster. Imagine standing by a small window overlooking the street. Below, vendors call out their goods. Donkeys pull carts. Customers enter nearby shops. The city feels alive from dawn until well after sunset. Even from a modest apartment, Rome remains impossible to ignore. The city constantly announces its presence. Interestingly, the ground floors of many buildings often serve commercial purposes. A shop may occupy the space facing the street, while apartments rise above. This arrangement keeps commerce woven directly into residential life. You might live above a baker, or beside a cloth merchant, or across from a tavern. The smells drifting upward each day depend heavily on your neighbors. Fresh bread could be a blessing. Less pleasant odors might be considerably harder to appreciate. For wealthier Romans living in a domus, the experience differs dramatically. These private homes often feature interior courtyards known as atriums. Sunlight enters through openings in the roof. Rainwater may collect in decorative pools below. Walls display painted scenes. Rooms surround shared central spaces. Visitors often enter through carefully designed entrances intended to display status and respectability. A wealthy Roman home communicates social position the moment someone steps inside. Yet even these impressive residences are not entirely quiet. Servants move continuously. Clients arrive seeking favors. Business discussions occur. Meals must be prepared. Animals require care. Life remains active. Rome itself rarely allows complete tranquility. Whether rich or poor, urban Romans live within a world of constant interaction. Their homes are not isolated islands. They are deeply connected to streets, neighbors, businesses, and the broader life of the city. As the morning advances, apartment windows open wider. Households become fully awake. Meals are prepared. Children are sent on errands. Workers leave for jobs scattered across the sprawling metropolis. The city is now fully alive. And as we continue our journey through ancient Rome, we will soon discover another surprisingly important part of daily life. Because before many Romans step out into the bustling streets, they must decide what to wear. And clothing in Rome is far more revealing about social status, identity, and daily routine than you might expect. In the next chapter, we will explore what ordinary Romans actually wore, from practical tunics and worn sandals to the famous toga that was far less comfortable than popular imagination suggests. Chapter 3. GTTING dressed for an ordinary day. Now that the city is fully awake, let us remain indoors for a little longer. The morning air is still cool. Sunlight filters through windows and doorways. People prepare for the day ahead. And before work can begin, before errands can be completed, before merchants can open their shops and laborers can begin their tasks, there is a simple question to answer. What will you wear? Modern films often give the impression that ancient Rome was a city filled with flowing white togas. Everywhere you look, people appear wrapped in elegant folds of bright fabric, strolling gracefully through marble streets. It is a memorable image. It is also somewhat misleading. The truth is that most Romans did not spend their days dressed like statues. For ordinary people, practicality mattered far more than grandeur. The most common item of clothing was the tunic. Simple, functional, familiar. A Roman tunic was essentially a loose garment made from wool, linen, or other available fabrics. It hung from the shoulders and usually reached somewhere between the knees and ankles, depending on the wearer and the occasion. For many Romans, this single garment formed the foundation of daily dress. Imagine pulling a tunic over your head as daylight enters the room. The fabric feels slightly rough against the skin. Roman textiles are not always soft by modern standards. Comfort exists, but luxury remains limited for most people. The quality of clothing often reflects social status. A wealthy merchant might wear fine materials with careful stitching. A laborer's tunic may show signs of repeated repairs. Patches are common. Frayed edges are common. A garment that still functions remains valuable. Clothing is not disposable. It is an investment. Something to be maintained. Something to be repaired. Something expected to last. Color also tells a story. The brilliant white garments, often associated with Rome, require significant effort to maintain. Most everyday clothing displays more natural shades. Cream, brown, gray, muted reds, soft yellows. The colors depend on available dyes, local materials, and personal resources. Many garments would appear much more varied than the pure marble white image that later centuries imagined. For working Romans, clothing must survive daily life. A baker deals with heat and flour. A dockworker faces dirt and heavy loads. A craftsman handles tools and materials throughout the day. Fashion exists, certainly, but practicality usually wins the argument. Footwear deserves special attention as well. Roman roads are famous, but they are not always comfortable. Stone surfaces can be uneven. Streets can become muddy. Dust gathers during dry weather. Sandals remain common throughout the empire. Many feature leather straps designed to secure the foot while allowing ventilation in warm climates. Some possess surprisingly sturdy construction. Roman shoemakers understand their craft well. A good pair of sandals may accompany someone through countless journeys across city streets and country roads alike. Yet sandals are not universally comfortable. After walking all day on stone surfaces, even the finest footwear cannot entirely prevent tired feet. By evening, many Romans undoubtedly appreciate the chance to sit down and rest. Now let us consider the most famous Roman garment of all. The toga. Modern audiences often imagine the toga as standard Roman clothing. In reality, it functions more like a formal outfit than everyday wear. Many Romans do not spend their workday wrapped in one. There is a very practical reason for this. Togas are large, heavy, awkward, and not especially convenient. Imagine attempting to carry goods through a market while managing several yards of carefully arranged fabric, or climbing stairs repeatedly, or performing manual labor. The toga quickly loses some of its elegance under such circumstances. For formal occasions, however, it remains important. Citizens may wear togas during public events, legal proceedings, religious ceremonies, or political gatherings. The garment communicates identity and status. It signals membership within Roman civic life. Yet even many Romans likely found it somewhat inconvenient. One can almost imagine a citizen carefully arranging folds of fabric while privately wishing for something simpler. The reality of history often contains such small ironies. The most famous garment in Roman culture may also have been one of its least practical. Women's clothing follows its own traditions. Many Roman women wear garments known as stolas over their tunics. Like men's clothing, styles vary according to wealth, age, region, and circumstance. Jewelry may supplement an outfit for those who can afford it. Rings, necklaces, bracelets, decorative pins. Such items serve not only as adornment, but also as visible markers of prosperity. Hair receives considerable attention as well. Roman hairstyles can become surprisingly elaborate, especially among wealthier women. Fashion changes over time. Certain styles become popular. Others disappear. Skilled servants may spend significant time arranging hair into complex patterns involving braids, curls, and decorative accessories. Meanwhile, ordinary working women often choose more practical arrangements suitable for daily responsibilities. The contrast between ideal fashion and everyday reality is hardly unique to ancient Rome. Some things never change. Children, of course, introduce another layer of practicality. Their clothing must accommodate growth, movement, and inevitable wear. Garments are handed down between siblings, altered when necessary, repaired repeatedly. A child's tunic may experience a far more adventurous life than any expensive ceremonial outfit. As you step outside into the Roman morning, clothing becomes a language of its own. A quick glance reveals clues about occupation, wealth, citizenship, and social position. People understand these signals instinctively. No explanations are required. The city itself becomes a moving tapestry of fabrics, colors, textures, and styles. Yet despite all these differences, one truth unites nearly everyone. Sooner or later, the demands of the day will leave their mark. Dust settles on sandals. Fabric wrinkles. Heat becomes uncomfortable. Work creates sweat and weariness. The perfect appearance of morning gradually gives way to the realities of daily life. And speaking of daily life, by now many Romans are beginning to think about something far more important than fashion. Breakfast. Not the elaborate breakfasts often advertised in modern hotels. Not towering stacks of food. Just the simple meal that helps begin another long day in the capital of a vast empire. In the next chapter, we will sit down at a Roman breakfast table and discover what ordinary people actually ate, why bread was so important, and why hunger remained a far more familiar companion than many modern listeners might expect. Chapter 4: Breakfast, Bread, and Everyday Hunger. By now, the morning is well underway. The streets outside are growing busier with every passing moment. Shopkeepers are opening their businesses. Workers are heading toward construction sites, workshops, and markets. Children are being hurried along by parents who have already begun thinking about the long list of tasks waiting for them. And somewhere in nearly every household, attention turns toward a simple but important matter. Food. Not a lavish feast. Not the kind of banquet that later generations would associate with wealthy Roman elites. Just breakfast. The first meal of an ordinary day. If you were expecting enormous platters covered with eggs, sausages, pastries, and fruit, ancient Rome may disappoint you slightly. For many Romans, breakfast was a modest affair. Quick, practical, and often repetitive. Bread stood at the center of daily life. In many ways, bread was not merely food. It was a foundation, a dependable companion present at almost every meal. A household could tolerate many inconveniences, but a shortage of bread was a serious concern. Imagine waking up and reaching for a piece of yesterday's loaf. The crust is firm, perhaps a little dry. The texture is denser than the soft commercial bread many people know today. Roman bread varied considerably depending on ingredients, skill, and wealth. Some loaves were excellent. Others were less impressive. But bread remained essential regardless. Many breakfasts consisted of little more than bread accompanied by olives, cheese, or perhaps a small amount of fruit. Some people dipped bread into wine that had been mixed with water. This may sound unusual to modern ears, but diluted wine was common throughout Roman society. Water quality could sometimes be uncertain, and watered wine was often considered a normal part of daily consumption. The flavor would have been milder than many modern wines. Less a luxury, more a routine beverage. For poorer families, breakfast might be especially simple. A piece of bread, perhaps some leftover food from the previous day. Nothing extravagant. Ancient Rome was wealthy as an empire, but not every Roman shared equally in that wealth. Far from it. Many families lived close to the edge of financial stability. Food had to stretch. Ingredients had to last. Waste was a luxury few could afford. As a result, meals were often guided by necessity rather than variety. Yet even simple food could provide comfort. There is something timeless about beginning the day with familiar flavors. The smell of freshly baked bread drifting through a neighborhood. The warmth of a morning meal shared among family members. These small experiences connect people across centuries. Some sensations hardly change at all. If you happen to live near a bakery, breakfast becomes even more tempting. Roman bakeries begin their work long before dawn. By morning, the scent of baking bread drifts through nearby streets. The aroma mixes with smoke from ovens and the growing activity of the city. Hungry customers arrive carrying coins. Fresh loaves disappear quickly. For many people, the smell alone would have been enough to make an empty stomach complain. Roman bakeries were remarkably important institutions. The city consumed enormous quantities of grain. Keeping Rome fed required a vast network stretching across the empire. Ships carried grain from distant provinces. Merchants organized transportation. Workers unloaded cargo. Millers processed flour. Bakers transformed that flour into the food that sustained daily life. An ordinary loaf of bread represented the efforts of countless individuals scattered across thousands of miles. Most Romans never thought about this entire system while eating breakfast. They simply enjoyed their meal. But the empire itself quietly stood behind every bite. Of course, not everyone ate the same foods. Wealth introduced additional possibilities. A prosperous household might enjoy better bread, finer cheeses, fresh fruit, honey, or more varied ingredients. Imported foods occasionally appeared on wealthy tables. Spices from distant regions could add flavor and prestige. Yet even among the affluent, breakfast often remained relatively restrained. The grand feasts famous in Roman history usually belonged to later meals. Morning meals were often functional rather than spectacular. Children, meanwhile, approached breakfast much as children have throughout history. Some ate eagerly. Others required encouragement. One can easily imagine a sleepy child staring at a piece of bread, while a parent insists that school or errands await. The details differ. Human nature remains familiar. As the morning progresses, hunger becomes an important part of the rhythm of daily life. Many workers know that breakfast must sustain them for several hours. A laborer lifting heavy loads throughout the day cannot afford to ignore food. Energy matters. Strength matters. And meals are never guaranteed to be abundant. This awareness creates a different relationship with food than many people experience today. A missed meal is not merely inconvenient. It can significantly affect the rest of the day. Even successful Romans remain conscious of food supplies. Bad harvests, transportation disruptions, or political instability can influence prices and availability. Grain is not merely agriculture. It is security. It is stability. It is peace. Roman leaders understand this very well. Keeping the population fed helps keep the city calm. An empty stomach can quickly become a political problem. Fortunately, on this particular morning, most people are focused on more immediate concerns. Breakfast is finished. The last crumbs disappear. Water jars are checked. Sandals are adjusted. Doors open. Families begin moving in different directions. And now the city truly comes alive. Outside, thousands of people pour into streets that were already crowded before sunrise. Carts rumble over stone roads. Merchants call to potential customers. Animals add their own sounds to the growing chorus. Dust rises into the air. Voices echo between buildings. The smells become more complicated. Some pleasant, some considerably less pleasant. Because while ancient Rome was one of the most impressive cities in history, it was also a city filled with noise, crowds, and odors that modern visitors might find rather overwhelming. And so, in the next chapter, we will step out into the streets themselves and discover what it actually felt like to move through the bustling, noisy, crowded heart of ancient Rome. Chapter 5: The Noise, Smells, and Crowds of Roman Streets. With breakfast behind you and the day now fully underway, it is time to step outside. The moment you leave your building, ancient Rome surrounds you from every direction. Not quietly, not gently, but with a constant, restless energy. Many people imagine ancient cities as calm places. They picture broad avenues, graceful temples, and dignified citizens strolling peacefully through sunlit streets. The reality is considerably more complicated. Rome is alive, and life, especially when nearly 1 million people are packed into a single city, creates noise. A great deal of noise. The first thing you notice may be the sound. Voices echo everywhere. Merchants advertise their goods. Customers negotiate prices. Workers shout instructions to one another. Children weave through crowds. Animals add their own contributions to the city's endless conversation. Somewhere nearby, a blacksmith strikes metal. The rhythmic ringing carries across the street. A cartwheel rattles over uneven stone. A dog barks. Someone laughs. Someone argues. Someone sings badly enough that neighbors probably wish they would stop. Everywhere sound. Constantly. For a visitor from the modern world, the absence of engines might seem like it would make the city quiet. Instead, thousands of human voices fill the space where machines do not exist. Rome possesses its own kind of urban soundtrack, and it rarely pauses. The streets themselves vary greatly. Some are surprisingly wide. Others are narrow enough that neighboring buildings seem to lean toward each other overhead. In certain places, sunlight struggles to reach the ground. Shadows linger even during the brightest parts of the day. As you walk, the surface beneath your sandals changes constantly. Stone paving appears in many areas, but it is not always smooth. Years of use have left marks and uneven patches. Rain, traffic, and countless footsteps have shaped these roads over generations. Walking requires attention. A distracted pedestrian may quickly discover that ancient streets can be surprisingly unforgiving. The crowds are perhaps even more remarkable. Rome attracts people from across the empire. Citizens, merchants, travelers, soldiers, slaves, freedmen, craftsmen, officials, foreign visitors. The city gathers humanity from every corner of the Mediterranean world. Languages mix together. Accents overlap. Different styles of clothing pass side by side. A person from distant Egypt might brush shoulders with a trader from Hispania. A merchant from Greece might negotiate with a customer whose family originally came from Gaul. Rome is not merely a city. It is a crossroads of civilizations. And nowhere is that more obvious than on its streets. Then there are the smells. Modern cities often have unpleasant odors hidden beneath perfumes, cleaning products, and modern sanitation systems. Ancient Rome makes far less effort to conceal itself. The city smells exactly like a place where hundreds of thousands of people live, work, cook, eat, and dispose of waste every single day. Some scents are delightful. Fresh bread drifts from bakeries. Cooking meat sizzles over open fires. Spices occasionally perfume the air near market stalls. Fruit vendors display their goods. Olives, herbs, and wine contribute their own familiar aromas. But pleasant smells rarely travel alone. Nearby, animals leave evidence of their presence. Garbage accumulates. Waste must go somewhere. Open drains carry away water and refuse. Not always efficiently. The result is a city that smells intensely alive. Not necessarily pleasant. Not necessarily unpleasant. Simply alive. A modern visitor might spend the first hour noticing every odor. A Roman citizen probably notices very few. Human beings adapt remarkably quickly. What seems overwhelming to one person becomes ordinary background information to another. As you continue walking, you encounter one of Rome's most famous features: the fountains. Throughout the city, public fountains provide water for residents. Some are simple. Others are surprisingly elegant. Water flows continuously through systems fed by the empire's famous aqueducts. People gather here throughout the day. They fill containers, exchange news, discuss business, share gossip. A fountain is not merely infrastructure. It is a social space, a meeting place, a source of both water and information. In a world without social media, conversations travel remarkably fast. News often spreads through human networks rather than written announcements. Someone hears a rumor. They repeat it. Someone else adds a detail. By midday, half the neighborhood may know about an event that happened only hours earlier. Whether the information is accurate is another matter entirely. Some things never change. The city is also filled with hazards. Not dramatic dangers lurking around every corner. Just ordinary risks that accompany daily urban life. A heavy cart may appear suddenly. Construction work may block part of a road. Loose stones create tripping hazards. Animals move unpredictably. Crowds can push and squeeze unexpectedly. Navigating Rome requires awareness. The city rewards attention. As the sun climbs higher, temperatures begin to rise. Heat reflects from stone walls and paved roads. Shaded areas become valuable. People seek relief where they can find it. Workers wipe sweat from their brows. Shopkeepers adjust awnings. Street vendors continue calling out to potential customers despite the growing warmth. The day moves steadily forward. And everywhere you look, there is evidence of work. Rome is not a city at leisure. It is a city of activity. Goods must be transporting. Buildings must be maintained. Food must be sold. Clothing must be produced. Repairs must be completed. Behind every impressive monument stands an enormous amount of ordinary labor. The empire functions because millions of people perform countless tasks that rarely appear in historical records. As you walk through the streets, you are witnessing those tasks unfold in real time. A porter carries supplies. A craftsman shapes wood. A woman purchases ingredients for dinner. A messenger hurries toward an appointment. None of these moments seem historically significant. Yet together, they create the reality of Roman life. And perhaps that is the most fascinating part of our journey. The Rome of emperors and generals occupies only a small portion of daily existence. Most Romans spend far more time buying bread than discussing politics. Far more time working than making history. Far more time worrying about rent, food, family, and obligations than contemplating the future of the empire. History often remembers extraordinary people. But cities are built by ordinary ones. The streets around you are proof of that. And speaking of ordinary life, there is one place where nearly every Roman eventually finds themselves. A place filled with bargaining, shouting, food, textiles, tools, and endless human interaction. Because sooner or later, everyone needs to buy something. And that means a trip to the market. In the next chapter, we will wander through the bustling markets of ancient Rome and discover what shopping was really like nearly 2,000 years ago. Chapter 6, Markets, Shopping and Street Vendors. As the morning continues and the sun climbs steadily above the rooftops, many of Rome's streets begin feeding people toward a common destination. The markets. Some arrive with baskets. Others carry coins carefully tucked away in small pouches. A few come simply to look around, hopping to hear news or meet acquaintances. But most have a purpose. Something is needed at home. Food, oil, cloth, tools, a replacement sandal strap. Perhaps a cooking pot that finally cracked after years of service. Life in ancient Rome requires a constant flow of goods, and the markets are where much of that flow comes together. As you approach, the noise grows louder. Not unpleasantly loud, just busy. The sound of hundreds of conversations overlapping in every direction. Vendors call out their prices. Customers ask questions. Children weave between adults carrying messages or small purchases. Somewhere nearby, someone is trying very hard to convince a customer that today's fish is exceptionally fresh. The customer appears unconvinced. Negotiation is an art in Rome, and many Romans practice it daily. The marketplace is a world of color and movement. Wooden stalls line busy areas. Canvas coverings provide shade from the strengthening sun. Goods are displayed as attractively as possible. Fruits and vegetables are arranged carefully. Loaves of bread sit in neat stacks. Pottery catches the light. Fabrics sway gently in the breeze. Unlike modern supermarkets, nothing here is hidden behind uniform packaging. Everything is visible. The food looks like food. The tools look like tools. The person who made or sold the item may be standing directly in front of you. There is something immediate and personal about the experience. You move slowly through the crowd. To one side, a vendor sells olives. Large baskets overflow with them. Different varieties offer slightly different flavors and textures. Nearby, another merchant specializes in cheese. The aroma reaches you before the stall itself becomes visible. A few steps farther, baskets of figs, apples, dates, and grapes create patches of color among the busy crowd. Seasonal availability shapes much of what people eat. There are no refrigerated trucks arriving from distant continents overnight. People consume what can be grown, preserved, transporting, or stored. The rhythm of the seasons remains closely connected to daily life. This means certain foods appear eagerly anticipated when they become available. The marketplace reflects the changing year. Summer looks different from winter. Harvest season feels different from spring. Food carries a sense of time. As you continue wandering, you notice how much of Rome's economy depends on human effort. Nearly everything here has passed through many hands. A farmer grew it. A laborer transporting it. A merchant purchased it. A vendor displayed it. The journey from field to market is long and complicated. Yet most customers think only about today's meal. The enormous machinery of empire quietly works in the background. At another stall, pottery is arranged in careful rows. Bowls, jars, plates, Storage containers. Ancient households depend heavily on pottery. Without plastic, glass containers in widespread use, or modern packaging, ceramic vessels become essential parts of daily life. A well-made storage jar can serve a household for years. A broken one creates immediate inconvenience. Customers inspect each piece carefully. No one wants to spend money replacing the same item twice. Nearby, textile merchants display folded fabrics. Wool remains common. Linen appears as well. Some materials are practical. Others hint at luxury. A prosperous customer may purchase fine cloth for a new garment. A working family might simply seek fabric sturdy enough to survive daily wear. The difference between necessity and luxury is visible throughout the market. Some people shop because they must. Others shop because they can. Street vendors add another layer to the experience. Unlike merchants with permanent stalls, these sellers move through the city carrying their goods. Some balance baskets. Others push carts. They bring products directly to areas where customers gather. One sells hot snacks. Another offers small household items. A third advertises simple refreshments to thirsty workers. The streets themselves become extensions of the marketplace. Commerce follows people wherever they go. If you pause long enough, you begin noticing something else. The market is not merely a place for buying things. It is a place for gathering information. People exchange news constantly. Stories travel from neighborhood to neighborhood. Business opportunities emerge. Political rumors spread. Marriage arrangements may be discussed. Employment may be offered. Arguments may begin. Friendships may strengthen. The market functions as a social network centuries before such a phrase would exist. Many Romans visit not only because they need goods, but because they need connection. Human beings have always sought community. The methods simply change. Of course, not every shopping experience is pleasant. Crowds create frustration. Prices fluctuate. Disagreements occur. Occasionally, a customer feels cheated. Occasionally, a merchant feels underpaid. The basic challenges of commerce remain surprisingly familiar across thousands of years. One can easily imagine a Roman returning home and complaining that prices were much lower last year. Some conversations are truly timeless. As midday approaches, the heat intensifies. Shade becomes increasingly valuable. Merchants adjust coverings above their stalls. Customers move more slowly. The bright Mediterranean sun transforms the atmosphere. Dust hangs in the air. Stone surfaces radiate warmth. The market remains busy, but the pace changes slightly. People conserve energy where they can. Work, however, continues. Work always continues. Behind every stall stands someone trying to earn a living. And behind every purchase stands someone hoping to stretch limited resources a little further. This reality connects rich and poor alike. The details differ. The concerns often do not. By now, your basket may contain bread, olives, vegetables, perhaps a bit of cheese, and a few household necessities. The errands of the day are gradually being completed. Yet for many Romans, shopping is only a small part of the day. The larger part is work. Long hours of work. Difficult work. Often physically demanding work. Because despite the grandeur of temples and public monuments, ancient Rome runs on labor. Millions upon millions of hours of labor. And in the next chapter, we will discover what ordinary Romans actually did for a living, from craftsmen and merchants to dock workers, builders, and countless others whose efforts kept the empire functioning day after day. Chapter 7, Work, TOEDS, and Endless LABOR. By the time the marketplace is at its busiest, much of Rome has already been working for hours. The city may impress visitors with its temples, public baths, grand forums, and magnificent monuments, but none of these things exist without labor. Behind every stone column stands a quarry worker. Behind every loaf of bread stands a baker. Behind every successful merchant stands a long chain of farmers, transporters, craftsmen, and laborers. Rome is an empire of remarkable achievements. It is also an empire powered by ordinary people doing ordinary work. Lots of it. As the sun climbs higher into the sky, let us spend some time among those workers. Imagine walking toward the river. The great river Tiber serves as one of the city's most important lifelines. Goods arrive constantly. Grain, wine, olive oil, timber, stone. Countless products flow through the city's networks every day. Near the docks, laborers move cargo from ships to warehouses and from warehouses to markets. The work is repetitive, demanding, physical. Heavy sacks must be lifted, barrels rolled, crates carried. The labor requires strength and endurance. By midday, sweat darkens clothing and muscles ache from constant effort. Yet tomorrow, the work will begin again. And the day after that. And the day after that. Many Romans spend entire lives performing jobs that leave little trace in historical records. Their names disappear. Their labor remains. Without them, Rome could not function for even a few days. Elsewhere in the city, construction crews are busy. Ancient Rome is always building something. A wall needs repair. A road requires maintenance. A new structure is under construction. Old buildings must be renovated. The city grows, changes, and repairs itself constantly. Workers mix mortar, shape stone, carry materials, raise scaffolding. The process is slow by modern standards, but often astonishingly effective. Many Roman structures will survive for centuries, some for millennia. Their durability begins with countless ordinary workdays under the hot sun. Nearby, a carpenter carefully measures wood for a commission. The smell of fresh-cut timber hangs in the air. Roman carpenters create furniture, doors, tools, carts, and countless other essential items. Every workshop has its own sounds. Hammering, sawing, scraping. The steady rhythm of skilled hands repeating familiar tasks. Apprentices watch closely. Mistakes become lessons. Knowledge passes from one generation to the next. There are no online tutorials. No technical colleges. Most learning happens through observation and repetition. Someone teaches you. Then one day, you teach someone else. Many trades operate this way. Blacksmiths shape metal. Potters form clay. Leatherworkers create sandals and belts. Tailors repair garments. Glassmakers produce fragile and valuable goods. Each profession contributes a small piece to the vast puzzle of urban life. And each requires years of experience to master. The finished product may seem simple. The skill behind it rarely is. Imagine stepping into a blacksmith's workshop. The heat strikes you immediately. A furnace glows nearby. Tools hang from walls. Metal rings against metal in sharp, rhythmic bursts. The blacksmith's arms reveal years of physical labor. Every movement appears practiced. Efficient. Nothing is wasted. This is not merely work. It is expertise. And Rome depends heavily on expertise. Even the largest empire cannot survive without skilled individuals who know how to solve practical problems. Of course, not all work involves craftsmanship. Many Romans earn their living through trade and commerce. Merchants spend long hours buying, selling, negotiating, calculating, and organizing shipments. Some operate small shops. Others manage complex businesses reaching across the Mediterranean. A successful merchant may never lift a heavy barrel personally. Yet mental labor brings its own demands. Prices fluctuate. Supplies change. Competition emerges. Risks must be managed carefully. Profit is never guaranteed. The uncertainty of business is hardly a modern invention. Many Romans know it well. Then there are the countless domestic workers who help maintain households. In wealthy homes, servants and enslaved people perform a wide variety of tasks. Cooking, cleaning, childcare, maintenance, administration. Some work is physically demanding. Some requires considerable education and trust. Ancient slavery was a complex and deeply significant part of Roman society. Enslaved individuals could be found in households, workshops, farms, mines, and businesses throughout the empire. Their experiences varied enormously depending on circumstances. Some lived comparatively comfortable lives. Others endured harsh and difficult conditions. Yet regardless of individual situations, they remained people whose freedom had been taken away. A reality woven deeply into the economic foundations of Roman society. As we move through the city, it becomes clear that social status often shapes work. A wealthy senator's daily responsibilities differ dramatically from those of a dock worker. A successful merchant experiences life differently from a laborer carrying bricks. Yet almost everyone, regardless of position, remains occupied. Roman culture generally values productivity. Idleness is not widely admired. Even members of the elite often devote considerable time to politics, business, property management, or public obligations. The idea of a completely leisurely lifestyle is more fantasy than reality. As the afternoon approaches, fatigue begins appearing across the city. Workers pause briefly when possible. A sip of water, a bite of food, a moment in the shade. Nothing extravagant, just enough to continue. Because the workday is far from over. Many jobs continue until late afternoon or evening. And unlike modern workers, most Romans cannot look forward to weekends. There is no familiar cycle of 5 working days followed by 2 days of rest. Life follows different rhythms. Festivals and religious observances provide breaks. Certain public holidays interrupt routine. But for many people, work remains a constant companion. One task follows another. One day follows another. One season follows another. And somehow, amid all this labor, families must still function. Children must be raised. Meals must be prepared. Relationships must be maintained. Households must somehow remain organized despite the demands of daily survival. Which raises an interesting question. What happens when workers return home? What does family life actually look like in ancient Rome? Because beyond the markets and workshops, beyond the roads and public spaces, another important world exists. The world of the Roman household. And in the next chapter, we will step through the doorway and discover what everyday family life was really like inside an ordinary Roman home. Chapter 8, Family Life Inside the Household. As the afternoon sunlight settles over the city and the busiest hours of work begin to soften, let us leave the workshops, markets, and crowded streets behind for a while. Instead, we will step through a doorway. Not into a palace, not into a senator's grand residence, just into a home. Because while Rome's monuments have survived for thousands of years, most Romans experienced history through something much smaller and more personal. Their families, their households, their daily relationships. For all its military power and political ambition, Rome was ultimately built from countless homes scattered across the empire. Each one contained its own routines, expectations, disagreements, hopes, and worries. And much like today, family life could be comforting, exhausting, complicated, and deeply important all at the same time. Imagine entering an ordinary Roman household during the late afternoon. The space is busy. Someone is preparing food. Someone else is cleaning. A child is asking questions that seem endless. An older relative is offering advice that may or may not have been requested. Daily life continues in all its familiar forms. The details are ancient. The experience feels surprisingly human. Roman families tended to be structured around a strong concept of authority. The head of the household, often the father, held significant legal and social power. This authority extended over family members and, in some cases, household property and decisions. To modern listeners, some aspects of this arrangement may seem surprisingly strict. Roman society generally placed great importance on order, hierarchy, and obedience. Children were expected to respect their parents. Family reputation mattered greatly. Individual choices often carried consequences not only for a person, but for the entire household. The family was more than a private unit. It was a social institution, a reflection of status, honor, and responsibility. Yet daily life inside the home was not simply about rules. It was also about relationships. Parents cared deeply about their children. Children formed close bonds with siblings. Grandparents often remained involved in family life when circumstances allowed. People celebrated births, weddings, and festivals together. They mourned losses together. They worried about the future together. The emotional experiences that shape families today were present in Roman homes as well. The language may have differed. The feelings often did not. Children occupied a central place in household life. The city itself was filled with young people. Some attended school. Some learned trades. Others assisted with household duties from an early age. Expectations varied according to wealth and circumstance. A wealthy child might receive formal education from tutors. A poorer child might begin contributing to family income much earlier. Life moved quickly in the ancient world. Many responsibilities arrived sooner than modern children might expect. Yet childhood still contained moments of play. Archaeologists have discovered toys, dolls, game pieces, and other objects, suggesting that Roman children enjoyed entertainment much like children everywhere. They played games. They laughed. They argued with siblings. They invented adventures. History often focuses on emperors and armies. Meanwhile, countless children were busy being children. Some things remain wonderfully consistent across centuries. Meals played an important role in bringing households together. Not every family could gather regularly due to work schedules and obligations, but shared meals often provided opportunities for conversation and connection. The food might be simple: bread, vegetables, olives, cheese, Perhaps a little fish or meat if circumstances allowed. What mattered was not only the food itself, but the gathering around it. The household paused briefly. Stories were exchanged. News was discussed. Plans were made. In a world without television, smartphones, or streaming services, conversation held a different place in daily life. People entertained one another. Women carried enormous responsibilities within the household. Their duties varied depending on wealth, status, and circumstance, but many were deeply involved in managing domestic life. Food preparation, textile production, household organization, childcare, financial management in some cases. The amount of work required to maintain a household was substantial. Without modern appliances, even routine tasks demanded time and effort. Laundry alone could become a major undertaking. Cooking required preparation from scratch. Water often had to be carried. Clothing needed repair. Everyday life involved constant maintenance. The smooth functioning of a home depended on many hours of unseen labor. In wealthier households, servants and enslaved workers often assisted with these responsibilities. Even then, management remained necessary. Large households could resemble small organizations, requiring careful coordination. Visitors arrived. Business matters intruded. Social obligations demanded attention. A prosperous Roman home might appear comfortable, but comfort itself required work. As evening approaches, another aspect of family life becomes visible. Religion. Many Roman households maintained small shrines dedicated to household gods and protective spirits. These sacred spaces varied from family to family, but they served as reminders that religious belief was woven into daily routine. Simple offerings might be made. Prayers spoken, rituals observed. Religion was not something confined solely to temples. It lived inside homes as well. The sacred and the ordinary often occupied the same room. Family reputation remained enormously important throughout Roman society. A person's actions reflected upon relatives. Success brought honor. Failure could bring embarrassment. This pressure influenced behavior in countless ways. Marriage arrangements, career choices, social interactions. Everything existed within a wider network of family expectations. Modern ideas about individual independence would sometimes have seemed unusual to Roman observers. Identity was closely connected to household and family connections. Yet despite social pressures and responsibilities, Roman families also experienced joy. A successful harvest, a child's achievement, a festival's celebration, a wedding, a reunion with a relative returning from travel. Life was difficult in many respects, but happiness still found opportunities to appear. People laughed together, celebrated together, shared moments of comfort and affection. The ancient world was not simply a story of hardship. It was a story of people living complete lives. As the sun begins sinking lower in the sky, household activity gradually changes. Some family members return from work. Others prepare the evening meal. Children finish daily responsibilities. The city outside remains busy, but the focus shifts inward. Home becomes increasingly important. And among the younger members of the household, another concern awaits. School. Because tomorrow morning, many Roman children will once again sit with teachers, practice reading and writing, memorize lessons, and discover that students have been complaining about education for at least 2,000 years. In the next chapter, we will explore what school and childhood education were really like in ancient Rome, from strict teachers and wax tablets to the surprisingly demanding expectations placed upon young learners. Chapter 9: School, Learning, and Growing Up Roman. As evening slowly approaches and families gather within their homes, let us spend some time thinking about the younger residents of ancient Rome. The children, the future merchants, the future soldiers, the future craftsmen, the future parents, and perhaps, though no one knows it yet, the future citizens whose lives will carry Rome into another generation. For many Roman children, tomorrow will begin much like today. They will wake early, eat a simple meal, and then, rather than heading to a workshop or market, they will go to school. At least some of them will. Education in ancient Rome is a fascinating mixture of opportunity, discipline, social status, and expectation. Not every child receives the same education. Far from it. Wealth plays a major role. A prosperous family can afford tutors, books, and years of study. A poorer family may need a child to begin working at a much younger age. As a result, educational experiences vary greatly. Yet for those who do attend school, daily life can be surprisingly demanding. Imagine a small classroom somewhere in Rome. Perhaps it occupies part of a shop. Perhaps it is a rented space near a busy street. Do not picture a modern school building with hallways, lockers, and rows of identical desks. Roman schools are often far simpler. The sounds of the city may drift directly into the learning space. Carts rattle outside. Vendors call out prices. Pedestrians pass by. Learning happens amid the noise of daily urban life. Students sit with wax tablets, writing implements, and carefully memorized lessons. Books exist, of course, but they are expensive. Every text must be copied by hand. A single manuscript represents many hours of labor. As a result, memorization becomes extremely important. Students learn by listening, repeating, reciting, practicing again and again. The teacher speaks. The students repeat. The process continues. Patiently, relentlessly. Some children enjoy it. Others almost certainly dream of being anywhere else. Human nature has not changed very much. Reading and writing form the foundation of education. Latin dominates daily life in Rome, though Greek is also highly valued among educated Romans. In fact, many wealthy families consider knowledge of Greek a mark of culture and sophistication. A well-educated Roman may comfortably navigate both languages. For ambitious families, education offers a pathway to opportunity. Knowledge can open doors. Connections can be built. Careers can advance. Parents understand this, which is one reason expectations can become quite high. Teachers are not always gentle. Roman education often emphasizes discipline. Modern listeners may find some teaching methods surprisingly strict. Mistakes are corrected firmly. Attention is expected. Effort is required. The ancient world generally places less emphasis on protecting a student's self-esteem and more emphasis on producing results. Whether students appreciate this approach is another question entirely. One suspects many children throughout Roman history shared a universal thought. Do we really need to study this? Mathematics also appears in the curriculum. Not advanced theoretical mathematics for most students, but practical calculations useful in business, trade, and daily life. Merchants need arithmetic. Property owners need arithmetic. Administrators need arithmetic. Rome runs on numbers almost as much as it runs on roads. A person who can calculate accurately possesses a valuable skill. As students grow older, some move beyond basic education into more advanced studies. Rhetoric becomes especially important. The art of persuasive speaking holds enormous value in Roman society. Public life often revolves around speeches, debates, legal arguments, and political discussions. A young Roman hopping for a career in law or politics may spend years learning how to organize ideas and present them effectively. Imagine standing before classmates practicing a speech. Every word matters. Every gesture matters. The audience listens carefully. The teacher listens even more carefully. It is not enough to be correct. You must also be convincing. Roman culture admires eloquence. The ability to speak well can shape an entire career. Of course, education does not occur only inside classrooms. Much of what Roman children learn comes directly from family life. A blacksmith's child observes metalwork. A merchant's child learns about trade. A farmer's child learns about agriculture. Practical knowledge passes naturally from one generation to the next. Many skills cannot be taught effectively from books alone. They require observation, practice, experience, mistakes, and eventually mastery. For girls, educational opportunities vary considerably depending on family circumstances. Some receive excellent educations. Others focus primarily on domestic skills expected within household life. Roman society does not offer identical opportunities to everyone. Gender, wealth, social status, and family background all influence the path a child follows. The differences can be significant. Yet regardless of circumstance, childhood remains a period of preparation. The adult world arrives quickly. Responsibility comes early. Many young Romans begin contributing meaningfully to household life while still quite young. There is less separation between childhood and adulthood than many modern societies expect. Life demands participation, and participation begins early. Despite these responsibilities, children still find time for games and recreation. Archaeological discoveries reveal dice, balls, dolls, toy animals, miniature carts, and other playthings. Children race through streets, invent competitions, challenge friends, laugh at jokes, become distracted when they should probably be paying attention. In other words, they behave very much like children. The details of their world are ancient. The experience of growing up remains remarkably recognizable. As evening deepens, lessons end. Wax tablets are packed away. Students head home. Some are proud of their progress. Others are relieved simply to be finished for the day. Teachers, meanwhile, may quietly hope tomorrow's class proves slightly more attentive. An ancient wish that countless educators throughout history have undoubtedly shared. Back at home, dinner preparations continue. The city begins transitioning toward another phase of daily life. Work is slowing. Families are gathering. And many Romans are thinking about one of the most enjoyable parts of their routine. Not school, not work, not errands, the baths. Because in ancient Rome, the public bathhouse is far more than a place to get clean. It is a social center, a meeting place, a relaxation space, and for many Romans, one of the highlights of the entire day. In the next chapter, we will enter the famous Roman bathhouses and discover why bathing became one of the most important social rituals in the ancient world. Chapter 10, BATHHOUSES, and the social life of cleanliness. As the afternoon gradually fades toward evening, a noticeable shift begins to occur across the city. The markets remain active, but the busiest trading hours are passing. Workshops slowly quiet. Laborers finish their final tasks. Shopkeepers count coins and organize goods for tomorrow. The long Roman workday is not quite over, but many people are already thinking about what comes next. And for a great number of Romans, the answer is remarkably simple. The baths. Not a private bathroom. Not a quick shower before bed. The Roman bathhouse is something much larger. Much more social. Much more important. In fact, for many citizens, visiting the baths is woven into daily life as naturally as eating dinner. Imagine walking through the city toward one of Rome's public bath complexes. Even before you arrive, you notice groups of people heading in the same direction. Friends chatting. Workers unwinding after a long day. Merchants discussing business. Young men showing off their energy. Older citizens moving at a slower pace. The bathhouse attracts nearly every layer of society. The city itself seems to flow toward it. From the outside, some bathhouses are surprisingly impressive. Large walls rise above nearby buildings. Decorated entrances welcome visitors. Inside, spacious rooms, pools, exercise areas, and gathering spaces await. A traveler unfamiliar with Roman culture might assume they are entering a public palace. In a sense, they almost are. One of the remarkable things about Roman bathhouses is that ordinary people gain access to facilities that would seem luxurious in many other societies. For a relatively small fee, a visitor can enjoy an experience that combines hygiene, recreation, relaxation, and social life. As you enter, the atmosphere feels busy but not rushed. People come here to spend time, to slow down, to enjoy themselves, to escape, at least briefly, from the demands of work and household responsibilities. The first thing that may surprise a modern visitor is just how social the baths are. Conversation fills the air. Friends meet one another. Business discussions occur. News spreads. Political gossip circulates. Deals are arranged. Arguments occasionally begin. The bathhouse is not simply a place to wash. It is one of Rome's great social centers. If you want to know what is happening in the city, the baths are an excellent place to listen. The bathing process itself follows a sequence unfamiliar to many modern people. Visitors move through rooms of different temperatures. Warm rooms, hot rooms, cool rooms. Each space serves a purpose. The experience is designed to relax the body and cleanse the skin. Roman engineering makes all of this possible. Beneath many bathhouses, complex heating systems circulate hot air through floors and walls. The technology is remarkably advanced for the ancient world. Visitors may not fully understand the engineering. They simply appreciate the results. Imagine entering a warm room after hours of labor. Muscles begin to relax. The tension of the day slowly fades. The noise of work feels distant. For a brief period, responsibilities become less urgent. It is easy to understand why the baths became so popular. Cleanliness in Rome differs somewhat from modern expectations. Soap exists in certain forms, but is not always used the way modern people might expect. Instead, bathers often apply oils to the skin. Special curved tools called strigils scrape away dirt, sweat, and oil. The process may sound unusual, but it is widely accepted and familiar to Roman bathers. What seems strange to one culture often feels perfectly normal to another. The baths also provide opportunities for exercise. Some visitors arrive before bathing and spend time participating in physical activities. Balls are thrown. Games are played. Bodies are stretched and trained. Roman society generally admires physical fitness, particularly among men. Exercise and bathing often go together. One prepares the body. The other refreshes it. Meanwhile, conversations continue everywhere. A merchant discusses grain prices. A politician quietly tests public opinion. A craftsman catches up with friends. Someone tells a story that grows slightly more impressive with each retelling. Another person complains about taxes. Some topics truly never disappear from human conversation. The baths are one of the few places where social boundaries occasionally soften. Wealthy citizens and ordinary workers may occupy the same general spaces. Differences remain, certainly. Status remains visible throughout Roman society. Yet the shared experience of bathing creates moments of commonality. Everyone arrives carrying the dust and sweat of the day. Everyone seeks comfort and relaxation. For a little while, daily distinctions seem less important. Of course, not every bathhouse is equally grand. Some are modest neighborhood establishments. Others are enormous public complexes capable of accommodating thousands of visitors. The larger bathhouses can feel almost like miniature cities. Gardens, libraries, exercise courts, mating spaces. The facilities extend far beyond simple bathing. A visitor could spend hours there without becoming bored. As evening approaches, the atmosphere becomes increasingly relaxed. The harsh brightness of afternoon softens. People linger in conversations. The day's urgency begins to fade. There is something deeply human about this ritual. After a long day of work, people gather together to rest, to talk, to laugh, to recover. Across 2,000 years, that impulse remains familiar. Eventually, however, hunger returns. It always does. Even the most enjoyable visit to the bathhouse cannot postpone dinner forever. Families are returning home. Cooking fires are being prepared. The smells drifting through the city are changing. Bread, vegetables, veggie, herbs, perhaps even meat in wealthier households. The evening meal is approaching. And in ancient Rome, dinner is far more than a practical necessity. It is often the social center of the day. A time for gathering, sharing stories, and enjoying what food is available. So, as the sun begins sinking lower beyond the rooftops of the eternal city, we will follow the aromas of cooking into the next chapter and discover what Romans really ate for dinner, how meals differed between rich and poor, and why food revealed so much about life in the ancient world. Chapter 11: Food, Dinner, and Roman Eating Habits. As the afternoon gives way to evening and long shadows stretch across the streets of Rome, a familiar feeling begins to spread through the city. Hunger. The merchants closing their stalls feel it. The laborers returning from work feel it. The children finishing their lessons feel it. Even the wealthy citizens leaving the bathhouses feel it. Across every neighborhood, thoughts gradually turn toward the evening meal. And so, as cooking fires flicker to life, and the aroma of food begins drifting through open windows and narrow streets, let us take a seat at the Roman dinner table. Or perhaps, depending on the household, the Roman dinner stool. Or bench. Or cushion. Dining arrangements vary greatly. As with so many aspects of Roman life, wealth shapes the experience. But before we discuss how Romans ate, let us first consider what they ate. The answer begins, once again, with bread. Bread remains the dependable foundation of daily nutrition. It appears so frequently that many Romans likely think of it less as a special food and more as a basic necessity. Alongside bread come olives, vegetables, legumes, and various grains. Beans, lentils, onions, cabbages, and other vegetables appear regularly on ordinary tables. For many families, these foods provide most of their daily sustenance. Simple, reliable, affordable when available. Not every meal needs to be memorable. Sometimes it simply needs to keep a household fed. Fish is also important, particularly in areas with access to trade networks and coastal resources. Fresh fish appears in markets when circumstances allow. Preserved fish products travel even farther. One of the most famous Roman condiments is garum, a fermented fish sauce used throughout much of the empire. To modern listeners, the description may sound unusual. To Romans, it is entirely ordinary. Garum adds flavor to countless dishes. Rich households use expensive varieties. Ordinary households use simpler versions. Its presence is so widespread that many Roman kitchens would feel incomplete without it. The smell, however, may have required a certain degree of cultural appreciation. Not every visitor would immediately understand its charm. Meat appears less frequently for many ordinary Romans than modern audiences sometimes imagine. Contrary to popular depictions, daily meals are not centered around enormous portions of meat. For poorer families, meat can be an occasional luxury, a special purchase, a festival food, something enjoyed when circumstances allow. The wealthy, naturally, enjoy greater variety. Their tables may include poultry, pork, game, seafood, and imported delicacies. Yet even among the elite, meals are often as much about social display as they are about satisfying hunger. Food communicates status. The more unusual the ingredient, the greater the opportunity to impress guests. Human beings have always found creative ways to show off. Now imagine entering an ordinary Roman household as dinner preparations near completion. The room is warmer than before. Cooking fires radiate heat. The scent of herbs mingles with the smell of freshly prepared food. Family members gather. Conversations begin. The pace of the day finally slows. For many Romans, dinner becomes the primary meal. Breakfast is modest. Midday eating may be simple. Dinner receives greater attention. Not necessarily because the food is elaborate, but because this is when people come together. Stories are exchanged. News is discussed. Complaints are shared. Plans are made. The meal provides structure to the evening. A pause in the endless cycle of work and responsibility. Children may eagerly describe events from their day. Parents listen, or at least attempt to listen. Older relatives contribute opinions, sometimes helpful, sometimes not. A household meal is rarely silent. Even in the ancient world, families remain families. Meanwhile, in wealthier homes, the experience can become considerably more elaborate. Guests arrive. Servants move between rooms carrying dishes. Multiple courses appear. Decorative tableware displays prosperity. The meal unfolds slowly. Conversation becomes entertainment. Business relationships may be strengthened. Political alliances may be reinforced. Social status is displayed carefully and deliberately. A successful dinner party is not simply about food. It is about reputation. Yet despite these differences, a common thread runs through Roman dining culture. Meals are social experiences. Food nourishes the body. Company nourishes something else. Across the city, countless conversations unfold simultaneously over bread, wine, vegetables, fish, and whatever ingredients happen to be available. Outside, evening settles over the streets. The intense heat of afternoon begins fading. The noise softens slightly. Not completely. Rome is never completely quiet. But the atmosphere changes. Work is ending. The city exhales. Wine often accompanies dinner, though usually diluted with water. Drinking unmixed wine is often viewed as excessive or uncivilized by Roman standards. Moderation, at least in theory, remains an ideal. Whether everyone follows that ideal perfectly is another matter. History suggests that self-control has always been easier to praise than to practice. Desserts, when available, may include fruit, honey, nuts, or sweetened preparations. Again, availability depends heavily on wealth, season, and location. Many Romans finish their meals with far less variety than modern diners expect. Yet simplicity does not necessarily mean dissatisfaction. People tend to appreciate what is familiar, what is available, what fills an empty stomach after a long day. As darkness gradually deepens, lamps begin appearing throughout the city. Small flames flicker behind windows. Shadows dance across walls. Families continue talking. Children grow sleepy. The day's work feels increasingly distant. For a brief period, many Romans enjoy one of the most universal experiences in human history: sharing food with people they know, people they care about, people who make a house feel like a home. And while dinner may be ending, another important part of Roman life remains present throughout the evening: religion. Not as a separate activity performed occasionally, but as something woven into daily existence. Into homes, into meals, into public life, into personal hopes and fears. Because wherever Romans went, the gods were never very far away. In the next chapter, we will explore the religious beliefs, household rituals, festivals, and sacred traditions that shaped everyday life across the Roman world. Chapter 12: Religion in Everyday Life. As evening settles more fully across the city and oil lamps begin to glow behind windows, ancient Rome takes on a slightly different character. The markets are quieter now. The workshops are closing. The streets remain busy, but the urgency of the day has softened. Families gather indoors. Neighbors exchange final conversations before night. And throughout the city, in ways both large and small, religion quietly continues its place in daily life. For the Romans, religion was not something reserved for a particular day of the week. It was not separated neatly from ordinary existence. Instead, it flowed through daily routines almost like an invisible thread, connecting homes, streets, businesses, politics, and personal hopes. To understand everyday Roman life, one must understand that the sacred and the ordinary often lived side by side. A Roman might pray before beginning a journey, offer thanks after a successful business deal, make a small household offering during dinner, attend a public festival a few days later, all without seeing any contradiction between these activities. Religion was woven into life itself. Imagine stepping into an ordinary Roman home. Near a corner of the house, perhaps in a small niche or shrine, stand figures representing household protective spirits. These household shrines, known as lareria, can be found in many Roman homes. Some are elaborate, others are simple. Their appearance depends largely on the family's resources, but their purpose remains similar. They serve as reminders that divine forces are believed to watch over the household. A small offering may be placed there. A brief prayer spoken. Nothing dramatic. Nothing theatrical. Just a quiet act woven into the rhythm of daily living. The gods, after all, are not distant figures who appear only during major ceremonies. They are part of ordinary life, part of family life, part of the daily routine. Throughout Rome, temples stand as visible reminders of this relationship. Their columns rise above streets and public squares. Citizens pass them regularly. Some enter to make offerings. Others pause briefly before continuing their errands. The temples themselves are important, but what matters even more is the sense that divine presence exists throughout the city. Rome is filled with sacred spaces. Some grand, some modest. Each contributes to the spiritual landscape of everyday life. The Roman religious world is remarkably diverse. The empire stretches across enormous distances and includes many different cultures. As Rome expands, it encounters new beliefs, new gods, and new traditions. Rather than replacing every local religion, Roman society often absorbs elements from various regions. As a result, religious life becomes a fascinating mixture of influences. A person living in Rome might encounter traditions that originated hundreds or even thousands of miles away. The empire is connected not only through trade and politics, but through belief as well. Festivals play a major role in this religious world. And Romans enjoy festivals very much. After all, festivals often mean celebration, gatherings, special foods, public events, and temporary breaks from ordinary routines. Who would not look forward to that? Throughout the year, various religious festivals bring the city together. Temples become busy. Public ceremonies attract crowds. Families participate in traditions passed down through generations. The atmosphere becomes lively. The city feels different. Even people who are not particularly devout may enjoy the communal experience. In this sense, festivals serve both religious and social purposes. They strengthen connections between individuals, families, and the wider community. Religion also influences how Romans think about luck, success, and uncertainty. The ancient world is full of unpredictability. Harvests may fail. Storms may damage property. Illness may appear without warning. Travel carries risks. Business ventures can collapse. Many aspects of life remain beyond human control. In such a world, religious practices provide a sense of structure and reassurance. People seek guidance, protection, favor, comfort. The desire to understand uncertain circumstances is deeply human. Rome is no exception. Divination occupies an interesting place within this system. Certain specialists attempt to interpret signs believed to reveal the will of the gods. Bird movements, animal sacrifices, various natural phenomena. Such practices may seem unusual to modern listeners, but within Roman society, they are often treated seriously. Important decisions sometimes involve consultation with religious authorities. Politics and religion frequently overlap. Public life and sacred life are rarely separated completely. This connection becomes especially visible during major state ceremonies. Yet for ordinary citizens, religion remains much more personal than political. A parent worries about a child's health. A merchant hopes for successful trade. A traveler seeks a safe journey. A farmer hopes for favorable weather. The concerns are practical. The prayers often are as well. One particularly interesting feature of Roman religion is its emphasis on ritual. Doing things correctly matters. The proper words, the proper offering, the proper sequence. Attention to detail is important. Religion is not only about belief, but about practice. A carefully performed ritual reflects respect for tradition and for the gods themselves. There is something comforting about this consistency. The ritual creates a sense of order within an unpredictable world. As the empire grows, new religious movements appear alongside traditional beliefs. Different philosophies spread. New ideas circulate through cities and trade routes. Rome becomes a meeting place not only for goods and people, but for spiritual traditions. The religious landscape grows increasingly complex. Yet for the average Roman citizen, daily religious life often remains remarkably familiar. A prayer here, an offering there, a festival approaching, a household ritual before dinner. Simple acts repeated across generations. As darkness deepens outside, lamps flicker gently within homes. Families settle into the quieter hours of evening. The sounds of the city continue, though more softly now. Religion remains present, but so does something else that Romans value greatly: entertainment. Because despite long workdays and numerous responsibilities, people still seek enjoyment. They seek distraction. They seek stories, games, spectacles, and moments of excitement. And while modern audiences often think immediately of gladiators when imagining Roman entertainment, the reality is much broader and more varied. The average Roman had many ways to pass the time. Some peaceful, some noisy, some surprisingly familiar. So in the next chapter, we will explore how ordinary Romans entertained themselves and discover what people did for fun when the day's work was finally done. Chapter 13: Entertainment Beyond the Gladiators. As darkness settles across Rome and the heat of the day finally begins to fade, many people find themselves with something that has been in short supply since sunrise. Free time. Not a great deal of it, perhaps. Life in the ancient world leaves little room for endless leisure. There are always chores to complete, repairs to make, errands to remember, and responsibilities waiting patiently for tomorrow. Yet even in a busy city filled with workers, merchants, craftsmen, and laborers, people still seek enjoyment. They always have. And while modern imagination often jumps immediately to gladiators fighting in massive arenas, the reality of Roman entertainment is far broader, far more varied, and in many cases, surprisingly familiar. Imagine spending an evening in ancient Rome. The workday is over. Dinner has been eaten. The city has relaxed into a slower rhythm. What do you do? For many Romans, one answer is simple. You talk. Conversation is one of the great entertainments of the ancient world. Without television, radio, podcasts, streaming services, or social media, people spend far more time speaking directly with one another. Friends gather. Neighbors exchange stories. Families discuss the events of the day. News travels through conversations. Humor travels through conversations. Gossip travels especially well through conversations. A person who can tell a good story or deliver a clever joke may become quite popular. Human beings have always enjoyed sharing stories. The technology changes. The habit remains. Board games and gambling games are also common. Roman children and adults alike enjoy various forms of play. Dice games are especially popular. Archaeologists have discovered dice throughout the Roman world, suggesting that people spent many evenings testing their luck. Some play for small stakes. Others become considerably more enthusiastic. The basic excitement of rolling dice and hopping for a favorable outcome appears to be timeless. One suspects that many Roman gamblers were just as confident in their luck as modern gamblers, and likely just as surprised when fortune disagreed. Street performers provide another source of entertainment. Musicians, jugglers, acrobats, storytellers. Various performers move through public spaces, attracting crowds wherever they appear. A talented entertainer can transform an ordinary afternoon into something memorable. Children watch with fascination. Adults pause to enjoy the spectacle. Coins may be exchanged. Applause may follow. For a few moments, daily worries fade into the background. Music occupies an important place in Roman culture as well. Various instruments accompany festivals, celebrations, religious ceremonies, and private gatherings. The sounds of flutes, lyres, and other instruments drift through parts of the city. Professional musicians perform for wealthy households. Amateur musicians entertain friends and family. Not every performance is perfect, but perfection is rarely the point. The pleasure lies in participation. Theater is among the most popular forms of public entertainment. Roman audiences enjoy comedies, dramas, and various stage performances. Large theaters attract crowds from across the city. Some come for the story, others come for the social experience, and some may simply enjoy being part of a crowd. The performances themselves vary greatly. Some are serious, others are light-hearted. A successful comedy can fill a theater with laughter. And judging by surviving Roman humor, audiences often appreciated jokes about everyday life, human foolishness, and social awkwardness. In other words, not entirely different from audiences today. Then, of course, there are the great public spectacles. The events that later generations remember most vividly. Chariot races, public games, athletic competitions, and yes, gladiatorial contests. Yet it is worth noting that not every Roman spends every waking moment thinking about gladiators. For many ordinary citizens, such events are occasional experiences rather than daily concerns. The races held in enormous venues like the Circus Maximus often attract extraordinary enthusiasm. Supporters cheer for different teams with remarkable passion. Victories are celebrated. Defeats are discussed endlessly. Rivalries flourish. One could easily mistake some Roman racing fans for modern sports supporters. The emotional investment can be surprisingly intense. Gladiatorial games, while famous, occupy only one part of a much larger entertainment culture. And even these events are often viewed differently than modern audiences expect. They are public spectacles tied to politics, status, and social life. Attendance is a communal experience. People gather not merely to watch, but to participate in the atmosphere surrounding the event. Still, for most Romans, life contains far more conversations, meals, games, and festivals than dramatic arena spectacles. The quieter forms of entertainment often occupy far more hours. Reading also serves as entertainment for educated Romans. Books are rare and expensive compared to modern standards, but literature remains highly valued. Poetry is especially popular. A skilled reader may recite passages aloud to friends. Stories circulate. Ideas spread. Knowledge becomes a form of recreation as well as education. As the evening deepens, many Romans simply enjoy the company of others. A shared meal, a walk through familiar streets, a conversation beneath lamplight. These experiences may sound modest, Yet they provide something increasingly precious after a long day. Connection. The ancient city can be exhausting. Crowded, noisy, demanding. Moments of companionship offer relief. A reminder that life is not only about work. As the hours pass, some people begin preparing for sleep. Others linger a little longer. The streets gradually become quieter, though never completely silent. Rome is simply too large for complete stillness. Yet beneath the entertainment and social activity lies a reality that shapes nearly every aspect of Roman life. Status. Because not everyone experiences Rome in the same way. A wealthy senator, a successful merchant, a skilled craftsman, a laborer struggling to pay rent. Each moves through a different version of the same city. The streets are shared. The opportunities are not. And in the next chapter, we will explore the realities of wealth, poverty, and social class to discover how dramatically life could differ depending on where a Roman stood within society's complex hierarchy. Chapter 14: Wealth, Poverty, and Social Status. As the evening grows later and lamps flicker softly throughout the city, it becomes easier to notice something that has been present all along. Not in one particular street, not in one particular building, but everywhere. The invisible structure of Roman society. A structure built upon status, upon wealth, upon family background, upon opportunity, and sometimes upon simple luck. Because although Romans shared the same city, they did not all experience the same Rome. Far from it. Imagine standing at a busy intersection as people pass in every direction. At first glance, the crowd appears united. Everyone is moving through the same streets. Everyone breathes the same dusty air. Everyone hears the same sounds of merchants, animals, and distant conversations. Yet hidden beneath these shared experiences are enormous differences. Some citizens own vast estates. Others own almost nothing. Some enjoy influence and political connections. Others spend their lives struggling merely to secure tomorrow's meal. Rome is one city, but it contains many different worlds. Let us begin near the top of society. The wealthiest Romans occupy a realm of privilege that would seem extraordinary to many of their fellow citizens. Large homes, servants, fine clothing, access to education, political influence, imported goods, luxurious meals. Their daily concerns often differ greatly from those of ordinary laborers. A wealthy Roman may spend the morning managing property, discussing politics, reviewing business affairs, or entertaining guests. Physical survival is rarely the central challenge. Managing wealth becomes the challenge instead. Yet even great wealth brings its own pressures. Status must be maintained. Appearances matter. Reputation matters. Social expectations can be demanding. A prominent Roman is constantly being observed by others. Success attracts attention. Failure attracts even more. Below the elite stands a broad middle layer of society. Merchants, shop owners, skilled craftsmen, professionals, successful traders. These individuals may not possess the immense fortunes of the aristocracy, but many enjoy comfortable lives. A successful merchant can build considerable wealth. A respected craftsman can earn stability and social respect. This group often forms the economic backbone of urban life. They work hard. They save carefully. They seek opportunities for advancement. Many hope their children will enjoy even greater success. The dream of upward mobility is hardly a modern invention. Yet as we move lower within the social hierarchy, life becomes increasingly uncertain. Many Romans live close to financial hardship. A poor harvest can affect food prices. An illness can interrupt work. A damaged tool can create serious problems. A missed opportunity may have lasting consequences. Without modern safety nets, even relatively small setbacks can become major difficulties. Imagine a laborer who depends upon daily wages. If work is available, food can be purchased. If work is unavailable, problems appear quickly. There are no savings accounts for many people. No insurance policies. No reliable systems designed to absorb unexpected hardship. Daily life often requires careful balancing. One day's earnings help secure the next day's survival. This uncertainty shapes countless decisions. Housing choices, food purchases, family plans. Everything must be considered carefully. And yet, despite these challenges, many people find ways to build meaningful lives. Communities form. Friendships develop. Families support one another. Human resilience appears everywhere. Perhaps nowhere are the contrasts of Roman society more visible than in housing. A wealthy family may occupy a spacious domus filled with decorative artwork, private courtyards, and multiple rooms. A poorer family may share a cramped apartment several stories above a noisy street. The physical distance between these two worlds can be remarkably small. A few minutes' walk may separate luxury from hardship. The city places very different lives side by side. Social status also influences clothing, education, political influence, and access to opportunity. Certain careers become easier to pursue if one is born into a wealthy family. Certain doors open more readily. Connections matter. Reputation matters. Family history matters. Roman society values hierarchy, and people generally understand where they stand within it. That understanding shapes daily interactions. How one speaks, whom one greets, how one behaves in public. Status is not always announced openly, but it is rarely invisible. Slavery adds another layer of complexity to this social structure. Throughout the Roman world, millions of enslaved individuals perform labor in households, farms, mines, workshops, and businesses. Their experiences vary dramatically. Some work under relatively stable conditions. Others endure extreme hardship. Yet all share a fundamental reality. They lack personal freedom. The Roman economy depends heavily upon their labor. This reality is so deeply embedded within society that many Romans scarcely question it. What feels normal within one historical period may appear deeply troubling from the perspective of another. History often reminds us of that uncomfortable truth. Despite these inequalities, Roman society is not completely fixed. Movement between social positions is possible in certain circumstances. Successful business ventures create wealth. Military service may offer opportunities. Freed individuals sometimes establish prosperous lives. Advancement is difficult, but not impossible. This possibility helps fuel ambition throughout the empire. People strive because improvement seems achievable, even if it remains uncertain. As the evening continues, lamps illuminate homes across every social class. The wealthy dine beneath painted ceilings. Working families gather around simpler meals. Children prepare for sleep. Conversations unfold. Laughter appears. Worries linger. Yet in many ways, the emotional experiences of these households are surprisingly similar. Parents hope for their children's future. Friends enjoy each other's company. People worry about money. People dream about better circumstances. Wealth changes many things. It does not change everything. And perhaps that is one of the most revealing lessons hidden within the streets of ancient Rome. Status shapes opportunities, but it does not entirely define human experience. Across the city, rich and poor alike are gradually reaching the end of another day. The markets are closing. The bathhouses are emptying. The noise is beginning to fade. Night is arriving. And soon we will walk through Rome after dark to discover what the city feels like when most people have returned home and the eternal city settles into the quieter rhythms of nighttime. In the next chapter, we will experience nightfall in ancient Rome and discover how ordinary people ended their days before electricity, streetlights, and the glow of the modern world. Chapter 15, Nightfall Across the Eternal City. Now the day is finally drawing to a close. The sun has slipped beyond the horizon. The last traces of golden light have faded from rooftops and temple columns. And across Rome, thousands upon thousands of tiny oil lamps begin to glow against the darkness. The city is changing once again. Not becoming silent. Rome rarely achieves true silence, but becoming softer, slower, more intimate. The busy energy of daytime gradually gives way to the quieter rhythm of evening. If you were standing on one of Rome's hills and looking across the city now, the view would be remarkably different from what a modern observer might expect. There are no electric lights stretching endlessly into the distance. No illuminated billboards. No glowing office towers. No streams of headlights moving through the darkness. Instead, small points of warm light flicker from homes, workshops, taverns, and public buildings. The city resembles a field of stars that has somehow settled upon the earth. Beautiful, but also fragile. Every flame depends upon oil. Every light requires attention. Darkness remains powerful. And once night arrives, people learn to respect it. Inside homes, evening activities continue for a while longer. Families finish conversations. Children grow sleepy. Small household tasks are completed before bed. A garment may be repaired. Tomorrow's supplies may be prepared. A final meal may be shared. The pace is unhurried now. Most people have already accomplished what they can accomplish today. The rest can wait until morning. For many Romans, bedtime arrives earlier than it does for modern people. Without artificial lighting, extending the day becomes expensive and impractical. Oil costs money, and after a long day of work, exhaustion often settles in naturally. The body follows the rhythm of daylight more closely than many modern people experience. When darkness comes, rest begins to feel appropriate. Yet not everyone is asleep. Some taverns remain active. Conversations continue. Travelers arrive late. Merchants finish business. Neighbors exchange stories. Certain streets retain a measure of life well into the evening. Human beings have always found reasons to stay awake longer than they probably should. Some habits also prove timeless. Walking through Rome at night requires caution. The familiar streets of daytime feel different in darkness. Shadows conceal uneven stones. Narrow alleys seem narrower. Landmarks become harder to recognize. A person carrying a lamp sees only a limited circle of light. Everything beyond it fades into uncertainty. Modern cities often give us the illusion that darkness has been defeated. Ancient Rome understands that darkness still belongs to the night. The city merely borrows small pieces of it. Night also changes the sounds of Rome. The shouting of merchants disappears. Market negotiations fall silent. Workshop tools stop ringing. The constant roar of daytime activity fades. In its place come quieter sounds. Footsteps, distant conversations, dogs barking somewhere beyond sight, a cart moving slowly through the darkness, the wind passing between buildings. For perhaps the first time all day, individual sounds become noticeable. The city is still alive, but it is breathing more slowly. Some Romans wake during the night from time to time. This is not unusual. Sleep patterns in the ancient world do not always match modern expectations. People sometimes rise briefly, tend a lamp, check on family members, or simply sit quietly before returning to bed. Night feels less rigidly scheduled, less controlled by clocks. Time itself seems softer, more fluid. Most Romans, after all, do not carry watches. The movement of the sun governs much of daily life. The stars help mark the night. Nature remains the great timekeeper. As darkness deepens, the sky above Rome becomes one of the city's greatest sights. Far removed from modern light pollution, the stars appear bright and plentiful. Constellations stretch across the heavens. Planets shine among them. For many Romans, these lights carry religious, philosophical, and practical significance. They are beautiful. They are useful. They are familiar companions. Imagine standing quietly in a courtyard. The city around you has largely settled. Above, the stars shine clearly. Below, Rome sleeps, or at least attempts to. Somewhere, a baby cries. Somewhere, a neighbor snores loudly enough to test everyone's patience. Somewhere, a dog remains convinced that barking at absolutely nothing is a worthwhile activity. Even in the ancient world, perfect tranquility remains slightly out of reach. Yet compared to the crowded noise of daylight, the difference is remarkable. The city finally rests. And as it rests, it reveals something important. Most Romans will never command armies. Most will never govern provinces. Most will never appear in history books. Tomorrow they will wake and repeat familiar routines. Work, meals, family, errands, conversations, small worries, small joys, the ordinary rhythms of life. History often remembers extraordinary moments, but real life is mostly made of ordinary ones. The Rome that conquered vast territories and built magnificent monuments was sustained not only by emperors and generals. It was sustained by bakers waking before dawn, teachers getting students, laborers carrying supplies, parents raising children, merchants opening shops, families sharing meals, the countless ordinary people whose names have long been forgotten. As the night grows deeper and the city drifts further into sleep, we arrive at the final stage of our journey. One last quiet walk through ancient Rome. One final reflection on what everyday life truly felt like in one of history's greatest cities. And in our final chapter, we will step back from the streets, the homes, the markets, and the bathhouses, and consider what remains after nearly 2,000 years have passed. Chapter 16, Looking Back at an Ordinary Roman Life. Now the city is quiet. Not silent, because Rome is never truly silent, even in its sleep. But quieter than it has been all day. The lamps have dimmed in many homes. The streets are mostly empty. The markets are closed. The bathhouses are dark. And somewhere behind all these familiar places, life continues in a softer, slower rhythm. This is the Rome that rarely appears in grand stories. Not the Rome of triumphal marches. Not the Rome of emperors delivering speeches from marble platforms. Not the Rome of famous battles carved into stone reliefs. Instead, this is the Rome that existed every single day. The Rome of ordinary time. And as we look back on everything we have walked through together, it becomes clear that daily life in ancient Rome was not defined by a single experience. It was a collection of many small ones. A morning beginning in a crowded apartment building. A simple meal of bread and olives. A walk through noisy, crowded streets filled with voices from across the empire. A visit to the market, where everything from food to pottery changed hands in a constant exchange of need and supply. Hours of work that varied from exhausting physical labor to skilled craftsmanship. Evening moments shared with family inside tightly packed homes or spacious, wealthy residences. Bathhouses filled with conversation, relaxation, and the brief suspension of daily pressure. Dinner tables where food was simple for many, elaborate for a few, but always shared. Religious rituals woven quietly into the fabric of everyday routines. Entertainment that ranged from conversation and games to music, theater, and public spectacle. And finally, nightfall, when the city slowly reduced its noise and returned to rest. What emerges from all of this is not a single portrait of Roman life, but thousands of overlapping ones. Some comfortable, some difficult, some filled with opportunity, some defined by hardship, and yet all connected by the same city, the same streets, the same shared environment of stone, dust, heat, and human movement. It is tempting, when thinking about ancient Rome, to focus only on its greatness, its empire, its engineering, its military power, its famous leaders. But those things were built upon something far more ordinary. Daily survival, daily effort, daily repetition. A baker does not think of himself as part of history. He thinks about getting up early enough to heat the oven. A teacher does not imagine shaping civilization. He thinks about whether the students will pay attention today. A laborer does not consider the future legacy of Rome. He thinks about finishing the task before his body grows too tired. And yet, without them, there is no empire to speak of. Only empty ideas. The truth about ancient Rome is that it was both extraordinary and deeply ordinary at the same time. A place of monuments and mud, of philosophy and exhaustion, of grandeur and repetition, of power and daily routine. And perhaps that is why it still feels strangely close, even after 2,000 years. Because beneath all the differences in technology, clothing, and culture, the structure of daily life remains familiar. People still wake up. People still eat simple meals. People still work long hours. People still return home tired. People still gather with family. People still seek rest at night. The details change. The rhythm remains. As we leave ancient Rome behind, imagine the city continuing without us. The lamps slowly fading. The streets growing still. The people sleeping, unaware that their ordinary lives will one day become the subject of curiosity, study, and reflection. To them, it is just life. Not history. Not legend. Not a story being told. Just another day that will soon be followed by another. And another after that. Now, as we finally step away from the eternal city, let your thoughts become lighter. The streets grow distant. The sounds fade. The lamps disappear into darkness. And ancient Rome with all its noise, labor, laughter, and exhaustion, gently slips back into night. Rest well, and perhaps, like Rome itself, drift slowly into quiet until only the soft rhythm of sleep remains.